Hello and welcome to another PO's Video Lab video. In today's episode I'm going to talk to you all about the BlackMagic Intensity Pro 4K capture card. Now this card can capture, output, and stream as well, but in this video we'll mostly be focusing on the capture capabilities of the card. So without further ado, let's jump into the overview. The Intensity Pro 4K is a capture card that makes big promises in a small package. BlackMagic created this card with the intent for consumers to capture, stream, and even output video content all with one card. With all those features and coming in at $199 US, BlackMagic Design has definitely designed this card to compete with the more consumer-grade capture devices. The Intensity Pro 4K features every consumer-grade input-output connection that one could ask for, including composite, component, S-video, and HDMI, with a 1.4B standard. The card itself can handle up to 3840 by 2160p resolution at 30 frames a second, which is considered consumer-grade 4K. So chances are it can handle most frame sizes and FPSs that you're likely to run into. You can capture under a variety of video codecs, including uncompressed 10-bit with 4:4:4 chroma sampling. Not only that, but BlackMagic Design threw in a light version of DaVinci Resolve on an SD card as an added bonus. With the overview out of the way, let's get to unboxing this bad boy. Okay, so let's tear into this box and see what we got. But first I'd just like to thank whoever drop-kicked this bad boy across the warehouse where this thing was stored. So the box is just a simple cardboard box, nothing special about getting it opened. First thing we want to do is look at the card itself. Here it is, the capture card in the silicone. It's not that big, and as you can see it's got a small fan over one of the chips. Whenever you're processing video like this on the fly, you can expect a hot card, so the fan is appreciated. We've got two HDMI ports here. However, they don't appear to be labeled, so I'll just have to do some trial and error to figure out which one is the input and which one is the output. And this port here is the breakout cable port. This is where all your older video cables connect to. Next we've got this golden pamphlet case that houses an SD card that should have software needed to get the card up and running. However, the software on this card is probably an older version, so we'll just download the latest software online later. Here's another pamphlet type case with another SD card in it, and this appears to be the DaVinci Resolve software that comes with the card. This is going to be the light version of the software, basically enough tools to get you started with. This little doohickey is the S-video input cable, and this connects to the breakout cable that we have right here. Man, that is a lot of cable inputs. I can tell this is going to get confusing trying to get the right cables plugged in. Okay, let's get this card plugged into the computer. So let's start by getting this panel taken off. Let's go ahead and zoom in here so it's easier to see. I'm going to install my card in this PCI Express slot right here. According to BlackMagic Design, you can plug this card into a 4, 8, or 16 lane slot. Alright, the card is secured in the slot. Let's fire up the computer and see this baby in action. Now we've got our card installed and we're ready to see it in action. But before we can capture footage, we need to install the necessary applications. And to do that, you simply go to BlackMagic Design's website and under the Support tab, find the latest downloads column and select the latest version of desktop video that is available for your operating system. For this video, we'll be using the Windows version, although I can't imagine it'd be much different for Mac OS or Linux. At the time of filming, version 10.11.1 is the latest, so that's what we'll be using for most of the video. When you click on the OS version you want, you'll be asked to input some info about you. Just ignore that and click the download only link at the bottom and you can download the installer with no hassle. Now that our software is installed, we can begin the capture process. That is, once we tell the card which cable input to use. Remember, we have 4 different inputs to choose from. To select which input you want to use, simply open the Desktop Video Setup tool, which can be found in the BlackMagic folder in your list of programs. Once open, you can see we have a simple interface which shows the capture card we're using and which input and output you have the card set to. To change the card's configuration, simply click this icon right under the card name. This will open a window with a handful of parameters to set. Now for this video, I'll be mostly focusing on the video capture aspect of the card, so we'll just click the Video Input tab. Now we have 4 different inputs to choose from: HDMI, component, composite, and S-video. Now for this first test, I'm going to be using my VCR, which has S-video output on it, so I'll just click on S-video. Side note here, if you're planning to use S-video for your capture, make sure you have the Y-shaped S-video cable plugged into the 8 green input and the 9 blue input. Once we have our input selected, we're given the option to make some changes to the amount of luminance or brightness, represented by Y, or chrominance, chroma, or sometimes referred to as C. I'm going to leave these the way they are. As for which IRE selection you should use, as I understand it, if you live in the United States, click on 7.5 USA. If you live in Japan or a PAL region, click on the 0.0 option. Moving right along, let's take a look under the Audio tab. As you can see, we have some options here as well. But for right now, I'm just going to mention the input options. Our first option allows for us to use hi-fi audio levels. If you check this setting, the software disables the audio input settings and implements its own audio levels for the source. Now, depending on the source, you may just want to keep this option off and adjust the audio settings manually. I'll talk a little on conversions later. Let's go ahead and get started capturing. So we're going to quit out of desktop video setup and go into the BlackMagic Media Express software. This is the layout of the Media Express tool. You can see we have this big blank area to the left, and that's the area where your captures are going to go. It will hold all the captures you make, and you can just click on a captured clip and start playing back the digital file. You can also create bins that allow for organizing all your clips. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the preferences, and for that we'll just go to Edit Preferences. Once in the preferences, we have some options we need to take into consideration. This first one, Project Video Format, shows us the frame sizes and FPS options we have available to capture with. Now keep in mind, we're not trying to convert frame sizes and frame rates just yet, so we're just going to let the software do its thing and keep this option as is. If you did try and change it, Media Express will not allow you to capture unless you have the proper converting options set, which we don't yet. Next we have the Capture File Format. This option allows for different compression schemes to be used. If my understanding is correct, the type of video codec you have installed on your computer will determine how many options you have at your disposal. Since I don't own a lot of video software for this computer, my options are limited. For now, I'm just going to keep it on AVI 8-bit YUV. Next, we have the option to use drop frame timecode. The only reason you would need to worry about this option is if you shot footage with timecode. Moving on, we can choose where we want our video captures and still frame exports to go to. The next few options will have to do with drop frame. Now, this isn't the same as the dropped frame timecode option. These options have to do with the card itself not being able to capture and play every frame in real time from the source. There are various reasons as to why this could occur. It could be the video source, such as old bad tapes, the computer, or the card itself. I'm going to leave these options off, but they are there if you need them. The last one I'm going to touch on is the anamorphic SD 16:9 option, under the Conversion tab, which basically stretches your 4:3 frame into a 16:9 aspect ratio. Now, I understand you paid for all that TV real estate, but please, for the love of all that's good and decent, watch your content in the right aspect ratio. If not for you, at least for the people around you. Something you want to note when capturing, make sure your power settings are adjusted so that your computer doesn't go into sleep mode while capturing. Otherwise, the card will cease capturing and you'll have wasted a lot of time waiting on video that never captured. Okay, enough about preferences and power settings, let's get to capturing. To start a capture session, you'll want to click on the Log and Capture tab to the left of the Playback tab. Now as you can see, I've already got my setup hooked up correctly because I'm seeing the blue background that is common on VCRs. So really, I can go ahead and hit capture and hit play on my VCR deck and we're good to go. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and show you how you can name your clip. It took me a little while to figure this out, but in order to fill the name option, you need to fill in the parameters beneath it, such as description, reel, scene, etc. As you fill in those parameters, just click the plus button and it will add it to the name. Now that clapper icon to the left of the plus icon simply raises the number increment by 1. So, we've got our clip named and we can finally start capturing our clip. To do that, we simply click on the capture icon and hit play on our playback device. In this case, it's my VCR. You can tell we're successfully capturing due to the capture to disk animation playing. This is just some simple morning park footage I shot to have for testing purposes. Something to note while you're capturing, make sure your playback device is not displaying any text from the player itself. Notice the VHS footage I'm capturing didn't have the words play or video calibration overlaid on the video? This is because I turned off that function on my VCR deck. If you don't have these messages turned off, there's a chance your final capture will have that text burned into the source, and we don't want that. So when we're done capturing, we just click the capture button again, and it stops. We can then view what we've captured by double-clicking the thumbnail that's been generated, and we'll go from log and capture to playback. Keep in mind that the audio from your captures won't play as it's being captured, nor when you go to playback mode. You'll have to watch the footage on a video player if you want to hear the audio. There is a way to adjust the audio settings in Windows to play the audio of what is being captured, but it just ends up going out of sync for me, so I feel it's not worth it. If you would like to watch your captured file in a video player app such as VLC or Windows Media Player, simply right-click the thumbnail and choose Open File Location. You'll immediately be taken to the folder where the captured file is stored. Also note, when you play back your captured footage in a player, the video looks a little stretched. This has to do with the card capturing the footage in non-square pixels. The captured clip can be resized in a video compression program such as Adobe Media Encoder. But let's face it, you don't care that this thing can convert your priceless memories to a more stable format. You only care if this card can forever capture the moment where Han Solo shot first in the pre-special edition VHS version of the original Star Wars movie. And let me tell you, it can. Don't worry, the blur was added by me to avoid any strikes on my account. This is only my third video after all. So far, every VHS tape that I've tested has been able to be captured by the device. Okay, so we can capture VHS tapes, but how about my DVD collection? First off, if you have a DVD you want the video from, use a DVD ripping program. I can think of no reason why you would want to manually capture a DVD when a DVD ripper can do the job much more efficiently. If you decide not to heed my advice and try to capture a DVD, you'll find the quality of the video unwatchable, especially if copy protection schemes are enabled. Look how dark these scenes are in my DVD copy of The Empire Strikes Back. It's painful. So it bears repeating, if you need a digital video file from a DVD, simply use the DVD ripper. Moving right along, let's get to the actual reason you clicked on this video, and that's to find out about the HD capturing. Now, most video cameras compress your footage as it's recording it. However, with the Intensity Pro 4K, you can bypass your camera's compression by simply connecting the mini HDMI port from your camera to the HDMI input on the capture card. Also, make sure your conversion settings are set to none, or your live feed won't show. This scenario would work well in a studio setting where you can stay in a general area with the computer. Keep in mind, bypassing the compression only works on footage that the card is recording in real time. Trying to recapture footage that your camera is already recorded would be pointless, because it's already compressed. Now, like my VCR tip, make sure you turn off any text displaying over the video, because that will get captured too. I went ahead and did an audio sync test with my camcorder hooked up to the capture card. And after about 30 minutes of uncompressed HD capture, I didn't notice any audio sync issues while I was reading A Study in Scarlet. Let's move on to Blu-ray. Out of the box, it doesn't work. I tested out different configurations, along with unplugging and plugging back in the HDMI cable. Nothing. Now, this is not a huge surprise, since the cards have to follow laws regarding HDCP protocols. But I thought I could at least get into the Blu-ray player's operating system. And I know what you're thinking, why not try an HDMI splitter? I thought of that. I ordered one off of Amazon, and despite the fact it claims HDCP stripping capabilities, I was never able to get the card to recognize the Blu-ray player. Oh well, like a DVD, it would be more convenient just to rip the Blu-ray than try to capture it anyway. Keeping on the HDMI topic, I was able to get the card to read my Xbox One system with no hiccup. There's an obvious lag, but that's no surprise when you're using the Media Express software as a window to the game. The resolution you'll get is determined by what you have your console set to. So if you need 1080p, make sure you have it checked on your console or it won't translate into your recording. In my test, I noticed terrible audio sync in my gameplay footage. The sync wasn't even close for me. Also, the audio seems to hiccup every now and then. As far as game streaming goes, I don't have any experience in that area. The box says it's capable of streaming, but it seems like BlackMagic listed that feature more as an afterthought than a dedicated from the start feature, judging from online communities and lack of streaming options in the software itself. I'd research what other people have to say before purchasing this for game streaming. While the Media Express software let me down game capture wise, I went ahead and did a quick test using the OBS Studio software. The audio itself was unusable due to the constant stuttering, but the sound effects such as gunshots and whistling sounded really close in sync. So maybe with some more tinkering, I can come up with a game capture workflow as well. My friend and I did manage to test out my HD camcorders with the OBS software. With my JVC GZ E300RU model, we managed to get the OBS software to recognize the camera. But when outputting a live signal, it caused horrible interlacing and the audio was echoing. I don't recall if we got those issues resolved. I don't think we did, but my Sony HXR NX70U camcorder, which by the way is what I'm using to film this episode, did much better when plugged in. Gone was the interlacing, and from what I could tell, audio echo too. I did a few tests, but I'll need to play around with the software more before I do any live streaming. Moving right along, I just want to say a few words regarding the conversions option in the video setup tool. The Conversions tab allows you to go in and convert from HD to SD or SD to HD. It really depends on your video needs as to why you would use these features. As far as SD to HD goes, it seems kind of pointless. As you can see with this VHS footage, here all the SD to HD feature lets me do is fill my standard definition 4x3 footage in a 16:9 HD frame. Just make sure to change your project video format and preferences. With the pillar box option, the footage zooms in to fill in the 16:9 frame, but you have no control over where on the video the image zooms into. With the anamorphic option, no zooming occurs, and the image is just stretched to fill the 16:9 window. As to the HD to SD option, I guess it's cool that it's there, but it seems to be more of a going backwards option than moving forward. So you're probably thinking, man, this card does it all. I should get this. Well, before you start clicking the Add to Cart button on Amazon, let me tell you my real world experience with this card. I purchased this card mostly for the uncompressed features it held. I had been using the Grass Valley ADVC family line for years when capturing old home movie VHS tapes, and for the most part it did the job just fine. However, I was capturing in DV, which got the job done, but I wanted something that wouldn't add any compression to the capture. Let's face it, VHS looks bad, and capturing compressed along with compressing it for DVD or MP4 degrades the video quality even more. With the Intensity Pro 4K, I figured this would allow for the cleanest capture I could get for the price. My initial tests were only for a few minutes. I didn't actually try to capture a whole tape, but I figured for testing's sake I better actually try and capture a full-fledged tape. This is where I ran into issues. My main issue was after a while of capturing, the audio would slip out of sync with the video. I figured this probably had to do with a bad spot on the tape, and tried other tapes as well as my family tapes, but I was still having sync issues. I decided to check that stop capture if drop frames are detected option, and sure enough, playing a tape long enough would generate the drop frame error box. At this point I'm thinking, where is my bottleneck? I've got a brand new built computer with up-to-date hardware. What gives? My first thought was maybe my storage isn't up to par. I'm currently using a RAID 5 setup with three 4TB SATA 3 Toshiba 7200 RPM drives with an LSI Mega RAID card. Judging from the results I'm getting from the BlackMagic Disk Speed test and the Crystal Disk Mark test, I don't think this is the issue. Maybe it's my VCR deck. For most of my tests, I've been using a JVC SR VS30 Super VHS/Mini DV player, which should be better than most consumer-grade VCRs out there, especially since it has time-based correcting options of its own. I figured the VCR was still working well enough not to be the main issue. I decided to go ahead and email BlackMagic and see if they could think of anything. After a few email exchanges and trying their recommendations with no better results, I figured they weren't going to be of any help. While doing research, I kept reading about how you need a proper time-based corrector when dealing with capturing old tape footage. Now, I already knew about this, but the thing is, on BlackMagic's website, they claim this card has a built-in time-based corrector. I just figured technology had come far enough to shrink down the time-based correcting technology into a small card. Apparently I was wrong, because BlackMagic's built-in time-based corrector has a lot to be desired. Like working. I then remembered that I didn't have all these issues when I was capturing with my Grass Valley ADVC 3000. Maybe that could do something to help. So I ran my cables from the VCR to the ADVC 3000 to the Intensity Pro 4K card, and made sure the Stop Capture if Drop Frames are Detected option was unchecked. After running a few tapes, I realized that the ADVC 3000 was keeping the audio and video in sync. I wanted to try a dedicated time-based corrector to see if that would make any more difference, so I purchased a Hottronic AP41 time-based corrector. And that only made the footage worse, by strobing the footage vertically, kinda like film in a projector. Any attempt to fix this issue just caused the footage to stutter and not play in real time. So for right now, routing the video and audio through my ADVC 3000 is the best option for my workflow. Oh, and if any of you know how to fix the problem with the Hottronic time-based corrector, please leave a comment below. So it took quite a number of tests, but I think for now I've got a suited workflow for capturing VHS tapes. Okay, so this is part of the video where I tell you whether or not you should get it or not. Well, let's start off with the positives. As far as getting the card and software installed, A+ right there. I didn't run into any error messages that prevented me from being able to get the card up and running. So the card does function, technically. Now we get to the negative side. Unfortunately, there's a chance it won't work the way you want it to. For those thinking about this card for capturing old home tapes, I did manage to get mine working. However, the card itself required extra help from a source that most people probably don't have access to or experience with. I mean, I got my ADVC 3000 on eBay, but I just checked recently and there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of ADVC 3000s for purchase, and the price is kinda steep. Now that doesn't mean the ADVC 3000 is the only hardware that can make the Intensity Pro 4K work with old footage. I'm sure some other form of time-based correcting technology exists that would allow for similar results. Before getting this card, you have to ask yourself, how much extra time and money are you willing to spend to get this card to capture what you want it to? Also, let's look at the gamer, thinking about using this card for game capture and streaming. I don't feel I'm the best person to say yay or nay on this one, but in my experience, the BlackMagic Media Express software did a terrible job at keeping the video and audio in sync. Plus, the noticeable lag wasn't a help. However, I did manage to get the OBS Studio software to recognize the game footage, and even though the audio recording from my tests suffered from awful stuttering, the gunshots did sound to be in close sync. Maybe with some more tinkering, I can get useful game captures to work with in the future. I wouldn't be surprised if my storage solution was an issue. It should be just fine for video capture, but when it comes to HD gaming, plus frame rate issues with games in general, a solid state drive may be a better solution than a hard disk drive RAID 5 setup. So you've heard everything that I've had to go through to get my card to work, so now you have to ask yourself, are you willing to put in the time and perhaps extra money to get the card up and running? Do I really want to go through all the trouble to get my card to work? Now, you may get this card and it may work absolutely perfectly fine for what you're needing it to do, and that's great. I just want to let you all know how I went about doing it and the troubles and struggles that I went through trying to get my card to simply capture VHS footage properly. So if you're serious about wanting to upgrade your capture workflow, do your homework on this one. Read other reviews and see what other people are saying before you go ahead and jump in on this $200 card. If I had to do it again, I would probably look towards other solutions for my video capture needs. But as of right now, I've got the card, so I might as well try and just hold out for good solid card updates, and we'll just kind of see where it goes. Maybe with some hardware tinkering and software tinkering, I can get it to work. But for right now, I think I've got the card in a state where I wanted to for capturing old tapes, and I think that's good for me right now. So thank you for watching. What did you think of my test for the Intensity Pro 4K? Can you point out a flaw in my testing or setup? Let me know in the comments below. I may need to come back to this topic in a future video. Also, if you like this video, I've got a couple other videos you can check out as well.